because if you are out of alignment, you will burn out. It is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. When you are out of alignment, you're putting yourself in direct friction with something that does not work for you, and you have like this cognitive dissonance that happens. And to be out of alignment personally puts you in line with burnout, fatigue, resentment.
You are listening to the Pinnacle Podcast, where we empower women in medicine through education, community, and actionable strategies for both the practice and the business of medicine.
Medicine is a lifelong career, and continuing education is crucial for professional development. Pinnacle is the first and only multi-specialty organization dedicated to addressing the challenges that all women in healthcare face.
Welcome to Pinnacle, the elite professional community providing education for women in medicine. At Pinnacle, we challenge you to pave your own path by helping you develop the skills needed to not only stay in medicine, but to excel.
Welcome to the Pinnacle Prescription Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Pamela Mehta, and today I am joined by Laura Gluck. Laura Gluck is a nurse practitioner, and today we're going to be talking about from critical care to lasting care, a nurse's journey to longevity medicine. Laura has spent 16 years as an ICU nurse. She left the ICU in 2018 and spent her free time diving into research papers and podcasts to build knowledge of how to shift health trajectories. In 2021, she realized preventative medicine through an integrative approach is the only career path for her and began applying to nurse practitioner school. Currently a nurse practitioner working in lifestyle and longevity medicine. Laura, we're so happy to have you here today. I'm especially excited because I have talked to you before about sort of your viewpoints on health and preventative medicine, and I think that is so important as well. And I think in medicine, we're often so focused on treatment strategies versus getting to the root cause. So I would love for you to kind of tell us about yourself and how you decided to leave ICU nursing and launch onto this new trajectory.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I am so excited to discuss it. I do want to say that I was a decade in ICU. I stepped away from ICU and went to pre-op PACU while I kind of sorted out what I wanted to do. So I've been interested in longevity medicine and kind of before it was really called that, actually due to the ICU. We do a fantastic job of keeping people alive in medicine, and frequently we have trouble with the preventative side. And a lot of the people that I was seeing in the ICU were there because of lifestyle diseases. So things like diabetes, hypertension, things that could have previously been worked on a little bit earlier on and potentially had shifted their trajectory. And so it got me thinking about what I would like to do, where I'd like to spend my time. And I personally started focusing on more prevention for myself and then thought about how that could be applied to the general public.
That is amazing. I love that. And how long, can you tell us a little bit about the transition to being an ICU nurse to being a nurse practitioner? What schooling, what training was involved? A lot of our listeners at Pinnacle are young women who are physicians, but we've tried to expand our community. We keep working at it. We've made it very clear over the last 6 years that Pinnacle is for all women. And so we're hoping today with, speaking with you that we're encouraging other young nurses to join in, but also for physicians to understand a nurse's journey. So I would love to hear kind of what that looked like when you were training to be an ICU nurse versus nurse practitioner and sort of the differences.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's a funny question to think about because I didn't actually expect to be where I am today. I actually never wanted to be a nurse practitioner. I wanted to be a nurse when I was 6. I had only my eye and goal on that. I'm one of those strange children who actually became what they wrote that they wanted to be. And I got into the world of medicine pretty naturally. I'm just very curious. Went straight from college as a BSN into the hospital at University of Virginia. Pretty quickly realized I liked it when people would crash. And I say that in the way that I thought it was very interesting, and there was a hustle and bustle and this adrenaline, where actually the adrenaline went up and it got me to really focus in. Which then I learned more about myself, and I really enjoy this. I like the critical thinking. I like being in that kind of environment. Then I went to the ICU. I was only on the floor for probably like 4 months before I transitioned to the ICU. It was just a better fit for me. Um, I didn't expect to be here today. I actually expected to go to CRNA school. I know that's gonna be a funny little point, because I think that that's a very frequent spot for ICU nurses to go. Um,
Why is
I
that?
love
Why do you think that is? Does it just feel like a natural trajectory? Does it feel like they're
it. I
similar
think it's a
fields?
personality type
Okay.
that goes into ICU, who likes the critical thinking, that likes the autonomy of patient care. I mean, I could stand the ICU and rattle off all of my patients' labs and participate in rounding with the doctors. I learned so much from physicians. Um, anyway, fast forward towards through the care, I got to know patients really well, and I was seeing this like pattern of disease processes. Um, I became pretty fluent in what to do, what to expect, the type of care we were giving. Um, I was there for a while, and then I realized that I wanted more knowledge. I wanted more education. I wasn't interested in my patients being asleep. Uh, and I really was like, this is a good path for me. I enjoy communicating and I enjoy teaching, and I want to follow up with my patients. It's just actually, I think, how I ended up picking. I went to family nurse practitioner instead of adult, which is interesting because I primarily only really worked with adults my entire 16 years. But I wanted to have a breadth of knowledge and be able to kind of choose where to go after school. So I applied to school in 2021, kind of still in the middle of the COVID time.
Yes.
And I ended up choosing University of Cincinnati, and it was a distance program, but at the time everything was a distance program, even local schools still. Um, so I chose a program and went through it. It's a 2-year program. It can be a little longer if you want to space it out, but I kind of just went for it. I was working while I went to school. So I was working in the hospital, going to school, doing clinicals. Um, and it it's a very fun path, because nursing, so it could take you so many different locations and places, um, which I think is very different from medicine, because once you kind of choose your like route, you're
You're on that
almost
path. You're not getting
you're on
off
the
that
path. I
path.
think you can change. It sounds like it's just harder. So nursing is more flexible. It's a little bit, you can kind of change what you like and change what you do. Um, and it was a good fit for me. I've been asked multiple times, if I had done it over because of where I am now, would I have chosen the same route? Would I have not chosen MD, PA, DO? Would I still go the same route? I don't think I could be here today without the route I went through. And I think that there's a lot of value in that route. And so there's just it's different perspective. I come in with a little bit of a different skill set even. Um, and I just think that that's different, and it's just a different member of the team. So I think that there's a lot of different ways to get to, for instance, like a primary care office, which we primarily are. But I think my route, actually, I wouldn't have changed it, because there's a lot of value from my experiences in nursing.
Well, I love how you thought about it as well, because I will say that, even when I was thinking about being a surgeon, so many people said, oh, well, you should look at anesthesia because you're in the OR. Well, anesthesia is nothing like surgery, right? So you just made the point of, you didn't want to be with sleeping patients. You wanted to be with awake patients and
Yeah.
communicate and follow up with them. And I think sometimes in our schooling, clearly for you in your nursing route and for me in my medicine route, like the way that we somehow end up where we're at doesn't really totally correlate with how people think of things or how our teaching is supposed to be, right? Just because I like being in the OR doesn't mean that I want to, sit next to a sleeping patient. Nothing wrong with that for anesthesiologists who love that, just
No, of
not for
course.
me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do think that it's important to know what makes you tick, because I think anything in life, any opportunity, any job, like if it makes you come alive, your patient's gonna have a better outcome. You're gonna be more invested. It's not just about like the lifestyle, that's a huge part of it, but there's anesthesiologists who love being anesthesiologists. And I hope that we all end up in a place that like really makes us um, on a most day basis come alive.
Okay, so you've just started your job. I think you told me it's been a month.
It's been a month.
And you were working with very sick patients when you were an ICU nurse,
Yeah. Yeah.
obviously. So tell me what this transition has been like. Not even just going from ICU nurse to nurse practitioner, but working with a completely different patient population.
That's been a big question. It was actually a big question for people when I was applying. So I had a couple different interviews, and people were very interested in how, like, why would I want to go from something that's like so extreme to like what they would consider like the other extreme. Um, there's a few different thoughts I'm having. It's completely different and it's very similar. So you're seeing disease processes on two different ends. You're seeing an end and you're seeing the beginning. And I'm trying to help people understand how I can help shift their trajectory so they don't end up where I used to be. Um, and there's a lot of value in understanding the end point of that disease pathology, and like the different processes and how they get there. You start knowing, okay, I need to watch this thing, I need to watch this lab, I need to really hone in on this part of this person's life, and how can I deliver it in a way that's going to be understood and like be able to be actually like applied to somebody's life. Is like a little bit of a skill, because you have to listen to people really well and understand kind of what motivates them. But the thing that I think is great that I carry that maybe some other people don't is I know what a sick person looks like. And that's a really big deal if you've only ever worked with pretty healthy people, even if you were in the hospital. If you've only worked with like mildly sick people, like I know what like something bad looks like, and I know what like a toxic patient looks like. And I think that that's actually incredibly valuable in the environment that I'm in. Um, Additionally, like the preventative focused care is specifically what I was looking for, and I landed in a spot that really values prevention in a way that most of medicine's not able to. I'm in a concierge practice, so we can really spend time getting a really good HMP, getting a really good understanding of our patients, um, and getting some deeper level labs that wouldn't get unless you've fallen off a trajectory in kind of the standard medical protocols. Um, so it is a big jump. It's a big jump. I had some people saying like you won't be able to take care of primary care patients because you only know how to take care of sick patients. But I would also say that like because I took care of sick patients, I actually think I would do very well at the preventative side of things.
Oh, you've seen the full circle. You've seen what, what it's going to look like if you don't take care of yourself, or if, the treatments aren't done properly if you get to that stage. I think it's actually wonderful. And I think part of the problem in medicine is that we all train and we go down this path and we don't see the things around us. It's very siloed, at least in medicine, that's how it is. And I think you have this opportunity where you've seen both ends of the spectrum. So that's really great. So tell us how you chose your job. So take us through after graduating MP school, or when you started looking for a job. Tell us how that looked.
Okay, I did things backwards.
Great. Awesome. I love it. We like to do things
Honestly.
outside the
So I
box here
wasn't
at
going to go back
Pinnacle.
to school. I do things a little bit. I'm very protective of my time and my resources, right? So my time and my money, and my own personal energy. I delayed going back to school for a very long time because I actually don't really align with what we would call like our standard medical system. I really dislike how insurance companies bully us in, tie our hands, make it really difficult to give good patient care. I mean, you and I know what we're talking about. Like anyone who's in medicine, so the majority of our audience, I guess, here today, understand that that is an incredible barrier to good patient care. Um, so when I started applying to medicine, I was thinking, or applying to grad school, I was thinking about like, what was my endpoint? Where did I want to work? And why was I going back? And is there a part of the system that I can get into that isn't utilizing that I could see myself functioning in? And it wasn't until I found that there were parts of medicine happening that were kind of leaving the system that I decided to go back. Now, when started applying to jobs, I wasn't sure that what I wanted existed in the capacity that I wanted it in. And so I started looking for job opportunities and like things around me before school ended. I put myself in clinical placements that I would potentially be with the type of person that I was trying to become. I tested out lifestyle medicine in kind of a very routine clinical office. And that doctor was like, it's impossible to practice the way I want to practice because of the system. And then I practiced with a private practice that was cash only, that was doing purely integrative and functional medicine, but they were both MDs, internal medicine doctors who were doing just integrative functional. And those patients all had their own primary care doctors and GYNs and everything. And actually, I serendipitously landed in this spot. I applied for a job that had posted that they wanted 3 to 5 years of experience as a new grad.
Oh,
And I thought, I would love to have a conversation with them. And if they don't want me, they don't want me and they won't have a conversation. And that's okay. And like, I understand that. But I just kind of shot some shots in the dark. Like, I would drop off my resume at different offices that didn't have any job opportunities open. Um, I drive my resume around different areas of that I would drive to and just be like, if you're looking for somebody, I'm interested in your practice. And just leave it there.
that is wonderful, Laura. I think people need to really hear that because, there are opportunities out there that aren't just, on some job resume board somewhere. And sometimes you have to sort of make your own path for the thing that you're looking for. And it sounds like you did that.
it I was like, I think of looking for a job, you spend a lot of time at work. We spend a lot of time at work, right? Especially in medicine, you spend a lot of time with work and a lot of time with your patient population. And I take that very seriously because I did get very burned out in the ICU capacity. That's actually how I ended up leaving the ICU. Very, very burned out. And I was like, I don't ever want that for my life again. And so how can I have an honest conversation with interviews without trying to squish myself into the box that they're looking for? Be honest about who I am, what I want, what my expectations are, and how I align in medicine. And um, if they want that and they're looking for that, it'll work out. And if they're not, it won't work out. And when things don't work out, that sometimes that is working out. And so I went into it kind of like open-minded. Maybe I'll start in urgent care. Maybe I'll start here. Maybe I'll just build up my skills. And I actually ended up landing into like what I would consider my dream spot
Oh,
right
amazing.
out of the gate. And it's a job that I was assured by multiple people it didn't exist. And I just think keep an open mind and say what you're looking for. And so anytime anyone would ask me what I was looking for, I would tell them honestly, even if they thought I was crazy, because you never know who you're talking to.
That is so powerful. I think there's this balance between, being a team player, recognizing that you have to have a job and make some money after you train, and then also not squishing yourself into a box, like you said. So not feeling so entitled that you can have anything and everything that you want, but also recognizing that us, and I think women tend to do this more than men, is we try to put ourselves into this, like you said, box or these boundaries that we know are not going to work for us, whether that's value driven or whether that's, you have children or something else going on in your life that you're not going to be able to work under these rules. And so I think there is there's so much power in what you just said, is that you really took your time to figure it out, what it is that you need in your life that aligns with your values, and that's how you chose your job.
So that is a big point, and it is how I chose my job, but that is a big point because I thought about it in like what are my top values that I need to be aligned with? What are my non-negotiables? Because if you are out of alignment, you will burn out. It is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. When you are out of alignment, you're putting yourself in direct friction with something that does not work for you, and you have like this cognitive dissonance that happens. And to be out of alignment personally puts you in line with burnout, fatigue, resentment. And so sometimes you have to be out of alignment for a short period of time, but you need to put some boundaries around that. Like, how long will you tolerate this spot feeling like this? Because you become a shell of yourself after a while. So it's really important to kind of think about that and be like, what are my non-negotiables here? If I have to meet in the middle somewhere, what does that look like, and how for how long? And have that going into whatever you're doing, and sometimes reevaluate because you may not be there anymore.
Yeah, I think you touched on such a great point. And I feel like, at least when I talk to young women in medicine and healthcare, um, at some of, we've talked about this before, at these FIGS retreats and gatherings, is so many of the young people, they don't understand that. And that is, like you said, that is a sure way to burn out. And so if you take care of yourself and have your priorities straight, and I would even recommend someone writing down, like you said, what is a non-negotiable, what you can deal with for some time, and what is absolutely not, something that you can deal with. Those things have to be in line. Otherwise, it's just not going to be successful for anybody involved.
That's true. It won't be good for you. It won't be good for whoever you work for, and it won't be good for your patients. So, and it won't be good for your family. And so it's like, what is, what are we burning down here? And it's really important to think about for people's lives.
That's great. So tell us about your practice setup that you joined. Are you seeing patients independently? Are you presenting each patient? I think sometimes there's a lot of misinformation on how nurse practitioners practice alongside physicians. So I would love to hear how your setup is like.
Yeah, and that's different everywhere. So one of the jobs I had looked at, it was like you get 1 week of training, and then you have somebody having your back for the first 3 months, and then you're just like set free, and like you're completely independent, and maybe there's somebody to ask questions to, but like potentially not. I am not in a practice like that, which is good for me. So I started here a month ago, as we said. Um, it'll be, we see every patient together. Occasionally there'll be something that comes in and either he's not here. I work with this fantastic doctor who's like great at teaching. And when he hired me, I was like, that you're taking on somebody who like needs brand new, like needs guidance. Yes, I have a lot of experience in nursing, but this is a completely different career. It's a different capacity. So he's fantastic. We go in, we see every patient, we'll like review things together. We have downtime because we are a concierge practice. We have a lot more control over our time. We have a very finite patient panel. So we actually only have, I think, 230 patients on the panel, which is pretty unusual for primary care. It's usually like 1,000.
Thousands. Yeah.
Um, and so we have a very special, unique opportunity. I understand when I'm speaking like this, people are probably like sighing and like, I can't, like, it couldn't be a more special practice in that capacity. I know that's becoming more common, but it's still not the norm to have this much time. So we have a lot of time with each patient. We get their labs done, we get their EKG, we get their whole thing done before we do any physical. So we'll have all the information before we see the patient. A physical, like an actual physical, is a 2-hour process for us. So we do
Wow.
a full like literally textbook head to toe exam, something that actually I rarely saw happen in clinical because no one has time. You get 20 minutes with a patient. So we have the whole thing set up. We have all of our tests. We discuss how their life is, how they feel, what their goals are. Go through every single lab result, every single part of the tests that we've done. Some people are getting like calcium scores and things like that we're going through and explaining. Everyone's getting DEXA scans done so we can do the bone and then body composition and go through goals there. Whether it's building muscle, losing some fat, we go through visceral fat. We go through everything, and we're doing it together. The concept. So I'm the first hire as an extension of him, and the concept that we kind of have together is that I'm trying to see exactly how he does things, so I can kind of be a copy and paste. Obviously with my own thoughts and like viewpoints on things, but kind of keep the practice very similar in how we do things because that is actually what people are paying for. It's him and his brand. So in that way, I might be functioning a little bit differently than another NP down the road, right? I'm very interested in integrative functional medicine and kind of a holistic approach and doing some deeper lab work and asking questions maybe in a little bit different way. Which is also something that he was like, I love that. Let's bring that in and like incorporate it. So I think there'll be a little bit more, it'll look a little different in a year, but the way
Well,
we're
you
doing it now.
created the role. So it sounds like, you came in, you created this role, and you guys are sort of making it together now and how it's going to look in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's mostly me. I'm not trying to take over. I don't want to take over the practice. I want to be an extension of him, primarily for the patients. And then, and he's a fantastic teacher. He did internal medicine. So it's all, internal medicines. We're not doing any pediatrics or anything. So my FMP won't be completely of use, but, yeah, so I'm being used more of a kind of, I think, more traditionally as like an extender to make us more available for everybody. Everything's run past. I'm seeing patients. If I see somebody alone, I'll do the full, like I'll give them like a whole report, like rundown. And I actually am very good at that part because of my ICU experience where I'd like
Yes.
literally memorize every single detail. Um, I feel very good about that. But we're just seeing everybody together.
No, that's great. So I want to switch gears a little bit to the longevity medicine. So I read that you did a lot of research before you decided to embark on this new career of yours. How did you reconcile sort of traditional medicine, evidence-based medicine, with some of these things that are a little less traditional? Maybe evidence isn't completely there, but anecdotally, we have a lot of case reports. How did you reconcile those things with you? Because ICU is very evidence-based, right? Very scientific, very traditional medicine. They're not trying anything new really over there, I don't think. And this is so different. So how did you reconcile both of those things in your brain?
So we do evidence-based medicine here, just to be clear. But if you think about it, it's more of a preventive focused way. So instead of watching and waiting until someone's A1C is full blown diabetic, or we're not going to wait for 326 glucose fasting, like instead of when we're watching a trajectory in the wrong direction, we are intercepting much sooner. So we're actually checking things like fasting insulin. Like we're checking things that are down or upstream, I should say, probably, upstream from where we see people going and correcting before they were to ever get to prediabetes. Like, how can we correct before the disease becomes the process that you would typically, like for the general population, public health, interject. So we're doing like ApoBs on every patient. We're doing genetics, so we know what your ApoE alleles are. So looking for like risks for Alzheimer's, and we have a more complete view. And then things like the DEXA scan, like we can start knowing that we need to get our patients jumping and loaded and like getting things going before they're in that range, that we're now like trying to backpedal. So certain things that we are utilizing that isn't necessarily run of the mill would be things like the GI effects. So we're look at stool, see what's going on there. What else are we doing? We're kind of taking a more holistic approach, but not, I wouldn't say there's anything specifically that isn't evidence-based that we're doing here. It's just newer. So it's very similar. I mean, I think everyone knows about, like, there's so many people who know like Peter Tia and like Huberman
Yes.
podcasts and things like that.
Yes.
So think of that, but in live action, but mixed in with people who are coming in for like your pneumonia and your UTI and things like that. So we're functioning in both capacities. But the practice itself, if you are a patient here, we are going to try to keep you healthy instead of chasing disease.
Well, I mean, I personally am all about that. I love that. I do think there are a set of physicians or medicine that are still in that old mentality. And we know, even in California, there's huge hospital systems that are based on just treating disease and not doing as much prevention. And
Yeah,
so, of course, it's evidence based. It's just a different, newer way of thinking about things.
it
Um,
is.
and, what did you read? What did you listen to? How did you come to this decision that this is the way you wanted to practice?
I think personal experience. I've had my own health issues in the past, and I'd get answers like, "Oh, I'm slim and active, and my labs looked okay, are like routine labs," and I'd be like, "No, no, no, this is how I'm feeling," and then I kind of get brushed off. But I think when you talk about like the hospital system and the way we do medicine, kind of like typically, right, our guidelines that we typically follow, um they're there for a reason. I do understand that they're there for some reason. Like, we can't have just everybody doing everything all the time. uh my husband and I were just actually discussing this the other night. He's an orthopedic surgeon as well. So it's interesting to have like this dialogue. But things that are frustrating to me is that, it going back to the insurance companies, I had a conversation with somebody 2 weeks ago. She works for insurance, and I was like, I really love prevention. I wish we'd focus on prevention. We spend so much money on disease and end of life. We spend so much money there. And if we only reversed it and spent the money on our food, education, about how to live better, and like even like continuous glucose monitors. I'll tell you a story about that in a second. But if we spent all this money over here, we wouldn't have to spend the money over here. And everyone would be living a healthier life for longer, be happier longer, because they could do the things that they love longer. We would be better. And she's like, "Yeah, you know why we don't do that in insurance?" And I said, "No, please inform me." And she said, "Because the average insurance for per person, you stay with one company in that insurance model for 2 years max before the company changes insurance or before you change jobs. So we're not interested in investing in you."
Oh God, but isn't that terrible? I mean,
And
I know this.
it
It's
makes
terrible.
perfect sense. I was like, "Oh, no, that makes sense. You statistically are unlikely to have to take care of any illness for more than 2 years. So like, why would you put a bunch of money and time into prevention?" And
Yeah,
it's
that's
an
just so
unfortunate
sad. It's
answer,
so
and it's
sad.
just true. So here's an example. I do continuous glucose monitors every now and then to check in with myself. My husband joined me at one point. Um, we realized that we could eat the same thing and have completely different responses. And then he had some of his staff who were interested in doing it. Half of his staff found out they're like pre-diabetic. They wouldn't have known. They had no idea. And we he also will have his patients who are have a high A1C preoperatively. He's like, look, I can't do your surgery. You're too high risk for post-op infection until you can get your A1C down. I'm going to write for a continuous glucose monitor for you. If you can bring into me to show me that you've kept it under 150 for the whole month or the 2 weeks, whatever he chose, I will do your surgery. And people like start learning about themselves. Every single one of them has come in and been like, they lost 5 to 20 pounds of his patients.
Yeah, and all of a sudden their knee isn't hurting anymore either, also. Or hurting less. I've had so many patients like that. You know, you kind of get to that, again, that root cause, the problem there. And then even though their knee x-ray looks like trash, they don't need the surgery anymore.
So he's even been, so because we've had so many conversations about this, I think that food is very powerful. How we're eating, our environment, what we're doing on a day-to-day basis is a vote for the type of person and the kind of health we want. And he's told patients who have like RA, you should consider going on an autoimmune diet. And they'll go on an autoimmune diet and all of their joint pain will go away. And so I think if we were to, as a culture, medical culture shift, we would be in a better spot. I do understand and appreciate that largely this is not well received by the medical community. But
I think it's a lack of knowledge, Laura. I really do. I think it's just like we've been taught for so long that to do it a certain way. I hope that's what it is. That's my hope, at least.
We're very dogmatic. Medicine's very dogmatic. It's also terrifying because it's very easy to, if you step out of your lane or if you say food actually can help a lot of things, sleep is actually really important. If you say any of these things that sound very like fundamental, to the wrong person, you're a quack, right? And so people kind of stay quiet for a while, or they don't understand the significance of these things because maybe we weren't taught. That it's hard to step out and say something or do something different, even if it's something very simple like, hey, let's change you to an autoimmune diet. That's not well received still. And so I think the fact that it's very dogmatic and that we are in the system that isn't really focused on prevention, we're very reactionary. There's a lot of pushback and a lot of like rolling of eyes. I think it's changing though, actually through podcasts and just people becoming more aware of things like on their drives and on their workouts or whatever.
Well, yeah, I think there's so much information, digital media, not just social media, but like you said, just even podcasts, YouTube channels, things like that. So patients are getting their health information that way, which is pushing on the medical community to listen and to take pause and to think about these things a little critically. So I think this is all a good direction. Okay, so we're running out of time, even though I would love to continue to talk to you, and I hope we get to do more of this. What would you tell, I'm going to ask you two last questions. Okay. What would you tell younger Laura? What would you tell her, brand new, floor nurse, those first few months going into the ICU and where you are now? What would you tell her?
That's a great question. I think I had a lot of fear of like feeling stupid. I think that a lot, like I struggle with, I think a lot of people on this podcast will understand this, and I just struggle with like this perfectionism. And I want to do the best on every test and do the best. I always want to be like polished. Like I always want to show up prepared and like know everything. And I think I would say, like, ask all the questions when they're stupid. I always am a question asker, but I think I was like very contained and like would go, instead of like diving in and being like asking the people who knew the most about it, I would especially the younger version of me, like go and like look everything up, but I wasn't necessarily utilizing like the experts. I was really afraid to like look silly and stupid. Don't I would say just go for it. Like I would be thrilled to answer any question I could help anybody with.
Yeah, I think you're totally correct that a lot of women feel this way, and I think it's more with women. I think we really critically think in a different way, and we really do want that knowledge. I will say, as working with men most of my life, most of my educational life, a lot of them actually just fake it as if they know it and they don't really know it. So there's not a lot of communication and asking of questions. And we perceive that as confidence and that they know exactly what they're talking about. And so I think that's also why we second guess ourselves to ask so many questions. But I would agree with you. For the younger women listening, ask all of the questions and ask them often, and of the experts. Take that all in, because once you're where Laura and I are, I mean, there's not a lot of people to ask questions to. I mean, I know you're working with a fantastic medicine doctor, but I'm kind of on my own. So
The best part about actually the one of the best parts about him, and not only if he can't answer it or if it's a question, he's like, let's look it up. Like it's
That's
never
great.
this like it's never like, oh, you should know that. Or like even there's no pressure, like he's like, I don't know that. Like let's look it up. And I think that that's very refreshing because I don't think that I don't remember that being like so common.
Well, that takes a lot of inner confidence, I think is so important. And we need more people in medicine and healthcare like that, willing to say, I'm not sure. Let's look it up. Let's chat with someone. Let's discuss it more. So I think that's great. That it sounds like you're in an awesome environment. Okay.
I
So
really am.
yeah, that's good. That's great. It's so amazing to see women find a job that really works for them, because I feel like I meet so many women that are just unhappy, and I feel like it doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't have to be that way. So we are looking forward to seeing you at Pinnacle this year. I know last year you had graduation. We always ask our podcast guests, what would be your pinnacle pearl for other women? So I know what you told your younger self. What would you tell today's Laura's out there? What would you be your pinnacle pearl of wisdom for them?
You can do literally anything that you're interested in. Um, there's going to be a lot of people along the way. There's going to be a lot of people that are reading you on, and you should listen to them more. There's going to be a lot of people along the way that will tell you that it's not possible in some capacity. Like it's not possible. This job was not possible, right? Or being a mother and a surgeon is not possible. How many times have you heard that? Like there are so many things that we're told we can't do, I think, for whatever reason. And I would say if it's something that you're able to think about, even if you don't think it exists yet, doesn't mean you can't create it. And it doesn't mean you won't find it. And so listen to the people who are cheering you on. Um, Listen to the people who are going the places that you want to go. Don't pay much attention to the people who have stunted their own growth. You need to find the people who are growing and go that way.
That's great. Thank you, Laura. So how can our listeners find you?
Oh, I am on both Instagram and TikTok as Laura K. Gluck. I took a little bit of like a step back, obviously, when I was in school because there's too much going on, but I'm going to be on there more often. Hopefully teaching a little bit and like kind of getting some of the conversations that we're having in the office out there for more people to hear about.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Laura. I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks for your time. This was really fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Pinnacle Podcast, where we strive to elevate the voices of women in medicine and inspire excellence across the healthcare landscape. Until next time, keep reaching for your pinnacle.